Okay. Make sure that you can hear me. All righty. Hello, people. It's Dr. Dunn on my live stream. Just want to see that everything's set up properly. Okay, the microphone seems to be working. Make sure it's at 100%. There we go. All righty. What do we got going here? Well, Black History Month. So that's where we will start. Just on a funny aside, I could have come today to class because, I sent out the email. I can't predict the future. So I'm like, well, the car's going to be in the shop for a few days, working on the brakes. So, I'll just cancel the class meeting and do it online. But come to find out that apparently the people at the garage were waiting for a whole bunch of parts on all the other cars. So they had nothing to do yesterday. So like by 6 p.m. or late in the afternoon, my brother calls me and says, "Oh, the car is ready. I'll come pick you up so I can bring you there and you can get it." Oh, okay. So I actually could have made it to class today, but that's, whatever. I didn't know. I will see you on next Tuesday. Whoever is watching now, or nobody, I don't know. But at least I'm getting it done, getting this video done. So let's start with this beautiful woman. Yes. Sister Thea Bowman. Here she is. There's her name. Oh, wait, I have to share my screen with you. Hold on, let me go back. Share the entire screen. There you go. I know it looks like a surrealist painting, but whatever. Anyways, there she is again. Thea Bowman. All righty, this beautiful woman. 1937 until 1990. All right. Black woman, not born Catholic. She was born in Mississippi to Methodist parents, so she was raised as a Methodist Christian. Raised as a Methodist Christian. But at the very early age, very young age, the age of 9, she decided to become a Roman Catholic. I don't know where she met Roman Catholics in Mississippi in the 1940s, but whatever. Anyways, she decided to convert, become a Catholic. And then at the age of 15, she decided to become a nun. Her parents didn't want her to, but they allowed her. And so at the age of 15, she joined the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. And you can see them dressed here she's with another sister, obviously, dressed in their habit, their uniform, okay, that they wore. Franciscan because the order derives from a group started by a guy named St. Francis of Assisi back in the 1200s AD. And sisters, obviously, because they're women. And perpetual adoration meant that their charism, their gift, the special thing that they did was to adore Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament continuously. So I guess they always had one or two sisters in the chapel before the Blessed Sacrament in prayer and adoration. That was their thing. Interesting. All right. So she joined them. And she was the only Black in the group, only Black woman in this order of sisters. And they sent her to school. She attended the Catholic University of America in Washington, where she eventually received a doctorate, a PhD in English literature. Mm-hmm. And later on in her life, she saw her mission as to kind of, minister to Black Catholics, to make them feel welcome in what they felt was, I guess, a white church or whatever. So she did that, and she helped compose a Black hymnal with specific, I guess, Black spirituality and stuff like that. And she's just known as a good holy woman. And she died at 52. She died in 1990 from cancer. She got cancer and suffered through that. And then she died. And in 2018, her cause for canonization was open, so she is still a servant of God. So she's at the beginning stages. She's a servant of God. So I ask servant of God, Sister Thea Bowman, to please pray for us. Amen. There. All right. Now I'll get my notes. What are we talking about? Hinduism. Yes, still Hinduism. Anyways, let me get my PowerPoint. There we go. All right, Hinduism. Let's see where I left off with Hinduism. Yoga. Oh, that's right, yoga. Yeah, so I mentioned, I guess I mentioned pretty much everything I want to say about yoga. Okay. It can be part of Hindu practice and can help someone achieve liberation. As I said, most Hindus apparently, according to statistical studies, do not practice yoga. But everyone seems to associate yoga with Hinduism. Yeah. Anyways. And there are different forms of yoga. As I said, the most common form that you're going to encounter at a gymnasium or something is called hatha yoga. Okay, but there are other forms that include sexual activity. Yes, we can all laugh about that, but that will come back to us when we talk about Buddhism. All right. Because that's a big part of, for example, some parts of Buddhism, like Tibetan Buddhism, which people don't seem to realize. Not everyone realizes that. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. The way of action, karma, performing the duties of your dharma. Yes, I know, they rhyme. Okay, so human beings live in a world where there are things to be done. You have obligations, dharma, that you need to meet. Your status in this life, wherever you are, as a ruler, a soldier, a merchant, a peasant, it involves certain duties. That you have a dharma attached to your status, and you have to perform the demands. So, it's a work, it's action. Okay, you fulfill the dharma by performing the actions of your status. A child should be respectful, dutiful towards his parents. Parents should care for their children. Husbands and wives should love each other and take care of each other. And as I've already told you before, but I'll say it again, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that it's wrong to attempt. It's even wrong to attempt to fulfill another person's dharma. It's better for you to perform your own dharma poorly or badly than to do another person's dharma well. So karma, I talked about indifference in the last class. The actions that you perform, how do they help you achieve liberation? Because they should be unselfish. You should be indifferent towards them. Whatever you do, your job, hobbies, whatever, these are all relative things and they are ambivalent. You should be ambivalent towards them. Okay. You should simply do them. Even if you perform an action to the benefit of another person, you should do it with indifference, unselfishly. Okay. You shouldn't care what the outcome is, whether, an action should be good. You should prefer good actions, obviously. Because you want them, because you should perform good actions, but you should be disinterested in their outcome. You should be focused more on that you're being obedient to your dharma, okay, and not towards the reward. You shouldn't see karma as a reward. Okay, so that's what I mean by saying you do it unselfishly. How does that affect your karma? Well, when you do things based on your bodily desire, Okay. If you do it based on your bodily desire, your fleshly desire, which is considered a lower, I guess, a lower form of desire, that produces bondage. That produces bondage. I guess even if it's a good action, like if I, give food to the hungry, but I do it so that people will see me, or it will make me feel better about myself. I don't care what it does for the people, but it makes me feel better. Then that's actually bondage, even though the karma is good. But if I do it unselfishly, not looking for reward, then the karma will actually liberate me and produce freedom. Produce freedom. All right. So that's kind of how karma works, the way of action. Okay. So here we have a quotation from the Bhagavad Gita. The man who is attached to his self only, selfish, who is contented in his self and is pleased with his self, has nothing to do. All right. Or maybe I'm misreading that. You're focused on your Atman because self is Atman. But you're attached to your Atman. All right, fine. You're contented with your Atman, pleased with your Atman. You have nothing to do. All right. You really have nothing to do. All right. Now, doesn't that kind of wipe out the whole reason for karma? That you're supposed to do, Dr. Dunn? Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to get into the mind of how it's understanding it. When I remember, I said it's it should be disinterested. Okay. Your Atman is what continues from life to life. So through the cycle. So that's all you really need to worry about. Okay. Not whether you're rich or poor or sick or healthy. All right. Or actions you have to perform. That's not your concern. So in a what manner of speaking, yes, it's true. You really have nothing to do. All right. But you are doing things. You have no interest in what's done and none whatever in what is not done, but you didn't do in this world. You just do it. Nor is there any interest dependent on any being. Therefore, always perform action, karma, which must be performed without attachment. If you have to kill, then kill. If you have to feed the hungry, feed the hungry. And performing those actions without attachment attains Brahman, the supreme. You attain the supreme. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if you want another way, there is bhakti. Bhakti seems to be a very popular way. And, I think you encounter this in a lot of religions, like especially Christianity, put all your trust in God, or, Jesus is my personal Lord and Savior. It's kind of like the same idea. Well, it is the same idea, I think. Bhakti, trust in the God or the goddess. They'll get you to liberation. Rely on your God. That's basically what Krishna says to Arjuna. I mean, yes, he says, follow your dharma and whatever. But ultimately, he's like, just give everything to me. Worship me. I am everything. Remember, Krishna reveals himself as Vishnu to Arjuna. So just trust in me, bhakti, have devotion to me. Okay, be loyal. Bhaj in Sanskrit. Bhaj means loyalty, to share. Okay. Can also be related. It's also related to the word bhanj, which means to separate. So I guess that means you separate off and show devotion only to a certain God, I guess. But that's another meaning. But I like loyal, bhaj, being loyal, loyalty. So bhakti yoga, or the way of devotion, way of bhakti, becomes very popular in the 500s AD. Okay. And it emphasizes focuses on an intense emotional love for a god or a goddess. Vishnu, as we know, is very popular. What is it, like 70%, maybe? A little under 70% of those who call themselves Hindus give their bhakti to Vishnu, about 30% to Shiva. Krishna is also big. Others worship, Kali, usually women. Men don't usually have bhakti towards goddesses because they're female. Women do. But also Bhakti can be given to a god, yes, but also to a guru. You worship your guru, your teacher, or to his teaching. That's what kind of happens with Sikhism. We're not going to study that in this class, even though it's it's a nice religion. It's a beautiful religion. Sikhism. It's another religion like Jainism that comes out of India. I think in the 1600s. I want to say, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's the 1400s. But anyways, um, it comes out of India just like Jainism, and so it shares some of the beliefs of other Indian religions. Sikhs believe in reincarnation too. They have gurus, but ultimately the teachings of all their gurus were written down in a book, and so their bhakti is performed towards the book, the teaching that's contained in the book, and the book is called the Guru now. So bhakti, yeah, it's more of a way of life than a clear doctrine. It's just a way of life. You show your love and devotion towards the God that you want, and the God will liberate you. And so idol worship, as we say, or the veneration of images, is a big part of this marga. Okay. According to the Gita, bhakti is a way of liberation that is actually higher than karma marga, karma yoga, or jnana yoga, because everyone can do bhakti, even women. Yeah, I know, even women. Yeah, and the shudras, the peasants, the outcast, not the outcast, the lowest caste can be liberated through devotion to a god. In the case of the Gita, it's Krishna, who is really Vishnu, but whatever. Anyways. And so, bhakti is not so concerned about the temple worship. It's not so concerned about yoga. It's not so concerned about theology, book learning, reading the Vedas. It's about showing your love and devotion for the deity, for the god or the goddess, especially the god who, takes on or extends his karma to you in a way, I guess, and will reward you by liberating you. Okay. Yeah, the way of devotion. So that's the last one. Now, should I talk about caste? I could. I guess I will very quickly. I'll end with it's the last thing. I'll do it very quickly, because it is still an issue. It's not supposed to be, but it still is. It's certainly part of the Indian religion and explains a lot of how Hinduism works, I guess. I mentioned it. But caste, also known as Varna in Sanskrit, Varna, this word Varna, which means color, so we have the color system. Interesting. That's what kind of helped lead some people to come up with the Aryan migration theory and think of it in a kind of racist way. The Aryans categorized people according to color, and the Aryans were lighter skinned, had a lighter color than the natives who had darker colors. And so, the lighter skinned were the higher Varnas, and the lower skinned were the lower Varnas in the lower castes. Interesting. Maybe. Okay. But that's just what the word means. Anyways. So you have your Varna, but then you have hundreds and maybe even thousands of what are called jatis within the Varnas, which is your birth caste, like street sweeper or something like that, or plumber, or baker or something, it's kind of like, jeweler. So yeah, you have people who, there are the general four Varnas, four castes, but within each caste, you have a jati as well, which is just what you're supposed to do. It's almost a property of your body, of your birth. You're born to be a street sweeper. That's it. It's your jati. So it can determine where you live in India, your jati. It can determine your work, your occupation, and yeah, there are thousands of jatis within the larger construct of the Varnas, the castes. Okay. If you read hymn 90, which I asked you to read for Hinduism, then you notice there it mentions the four castes, that when the world was created and was divided up and organized, at the creation of the universe, the castes were part of it. The world was divided up into the four castes, the top caste being the priestly class, which makes sense because the priests have to control, the priests offer the sacrifices and control the sacrifices, and the sacrifices control the cosmos or affect the cosmos, the universe. So that's the most important thing. Dharma, remember? So the Brahmin class is the priestly class, and you're born into it. You're not ordained to it. You have no control over whether you're a Brahmin or not. If your father was a Brahmin, then you are. If you're a man, women can't be born as Brahmins. So that's the name for the priestly class. The next class are the rulers and the soldiers, the rulers and the fighters, the warriors, the Kshatriya class. Kshatriya. Then you have the Vaishya caste, which include, the businessmen, basically, those who are landowners and businessmen, merchants, landowners and merchants. And then, so those are the top three. And then you have the very bottom class, the Shudra, basically the people who don't own nothing. They don't own land. They don't have their own business. They work for everybody else, They're laborers, artists, just general beggars and peasants, the Shudra, okay? And nobody wants to be them. They are the feet, basically. Actually, the dust underneath your feet, Let's say, the first three of the castes, the top three, I should say, Brahmin, note the I, Kshatriya, Vaishya, are called the twice-born or initiated castes. They're born twice. You have your actual birth, your biological birth. But then when you get at a certain age, you are reborn, kind of like born into the duties of your caste, whatever that might be. It's kind of a second spiritual birth where you're initiated into your caste. Kind of think of it like a bar mitzvah, in Judaism, right? And so you receive a sacred thread, a rope that you wear around your body, okay, that indicates your status. You're given a secret name and a special mantra to pray, okay? So, and when you are, and once you're initiated as part of these three castes, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, you're also committed to start studying the Vedas, okay, the Vedas. So you enter into that stage of the student of the Vedas. The Shudras, again, no one wants to be a Shudra because you don't have nothing nobody wants. You work for everybody else. So the Shudras are not twice born. They're initiated into nothing. They are part of the caste system, but as you can see, they're on the bottom, and they are not allowed to study the Vedas. The Vedas are not to be taught to anyone coming from the Shudra class, and including women. I mentioned women before. Certainly women. Even a woman from a Brahmin family is not allowed to study the Vedas. But Shudra men are not allowed to study the Vedas. Now, this has been part of Hindu religion for a long, long time, as far as we know, almost from the beginning, because it does appear in the Vedas. In modern Indian society, contemporary Indian society, it's supposed to not exist because India is a secular state. It's not a Hindu state. So there is no caste system in India. There's not supposed to be. However, the reality is that it still exists, at least from what I know. I've never lived in India, but from things I've read about India and stuff like that, yeah, it's still an issue. Okay. Even if it's not legally part of the structure of the Indian with the Union of India or the Indian Republic. I guess it is a republic. But it still is an issue. But for most of Hinduism's history, it is, and to understand Hinduism, you have to understand, you at least have to know about the caste system, because it does regulate, relationships and stuff like that. Because, certain castes, marriage, you can't marry, like a Brahmin, have to marry within your caste. So a Brahmin man should typically marry a Brahmin woman. Okay, you don't marry a Shudra. No one would marry a Shudra from a higher caste ever. And then there are the outcasts that I haven't mentioned, who are not part of this system. These are people who are considered so detestable, so disgusting, that they're not even worthy of being part of the caste system. And some of these groups, they're so awful that if a Brahmin priest even looks at one of them, he has to purify his eyes in some way, usually by looking into the sun briefly, and that purifies his eyes if he's ever looked at one of these outcasts who are not even part of the caste system. All right, so we certainly don't eat with them. The castes don't eat together. They don't share the same food and stuff. So there are all sorts of rules and things. And people will say it's not supposed to be part of Indian society, but it seems to linger on. All right, so we're done with Hinduism. Let's move on to Judaism. Don't say it. Well, I might have to write something down, so we'll come back. Let's go to Judaism. The Jews. Yes, the Jews, the Jewish people. Judaism. After Hinduism, Judaism is also one of the oldest of the world's religions. One of the oldest. How many Jews are there? Well, according to this image that I got from, what is this? The Jewish Agency for Israel, which is, where do they get their information from? The American Jewish Yearbook? Well, anyways, there are around 15.2 million Jews in the world as of the year 5782, which is 2021, in case you're curious. So that's 5 years ago. So if you had 5 years on, so it's 50. It's in Judaism. For Judaism, the date of the year is 5787. We're in the year 5787. It's been 5,787 years since the Lord created the universe. Okay. Okay, so around 15 million. As you can see from this map, you can see the numbers on the map. The plurality of Jews live in Israel. Almost 7 million are in the country of Israel. Another 6 million still live in the United States. And after Israel and our country, the rest of the Jews are scattered throughout the rest of the world. 2.3 million, if you add up all the numbers, 2.3 million live throughout the rest of the world. Most of them, as you can see from the numbers, France comes third, then Canada, okay, then the United Kingdom. All right. But there are quite a lot of Jews comparatively speaking, I guess you could say, in Argentina, but yeah, a lot of Jews still in France, a lot of Jews in Canada, but really the bulk are in Israel and the United States. Historically, Judaism is not a large religion, numerically speaking, in numbers. It's not a large religion. Okay. And in a way, technically, you really couldn't call it a world religion either, because it really is limited to this one group of people. Okay. But, okay, I'll get to that in a second. But, so why is Judaism part of a world religions course if there are only 15 million of them? It's not numerically a large religion. It's really not a world religion. However, it is a significant influencer religion, and it has influenced two of the major world religions, both numerically and historically, Christianity and Islam. And we'll talk about, obviously in this course, we will talk about Christianity and Islam later. All right. So, I mean, to understand those two religions, which are very significant, have been to much of the world, we have to understand the parent religion, which is, well, I shouldn't say the parent religion. Judaism, the religion of Judaism. I'll explain later what I mean when I talk about Christianity. But anyways, you have to understand the background religion. Let's put it that way. All right. Who or what is a Jew? Well, that's a good question. And it depends, even amongst Jews, you'll get different answers. And I'm going to give you the traditional answer, the answer that, if you try to emigrate to Israel, the question that you'll be, how they will determine whether you are a Jew legally. And I'll note, how other Jews think. But traditionally, a Jew is someone who has been born of a Jewish mother or has converted to Judaism. That's how you're a Jew. Okay. I would say the most common way is your mother was Jewish or is Jewish. Okay. So the biological linkage. You might say, well, but Dr. Dunn, my father's Jewish, and I'm not asking anybody, and I'm not making any judgments. Okay. You might say, well, yeah, but my dad's Jewish. So, and I was raised Jewish. Sorry. Nope. If your mother, but my mother's Irish, my mother's an Irish Catholic, but my dad's Jewish, or my mom's an atheist, or he's a Mexican or something, or she's Hispanic or something. And my dad's Jewish, nope, sorry, you ain't a Jew. All right. But my grandmother was Jewish. Okay. Did your grandmother give birth to you? No, she gave birth to your father. You're not Jewish. I'm sorry. Okay. According to the traditional understanding, you have to be born of a Jewish mother, or you have to convert. You have to convert through a ritual. What does that mean? Conversion means that you are baptized. You go to a synagogue where you dunk yourself in a mikveh. You dunk yourself in a pool of water 3 times. It's called a mikveh. You commit yourself to the following of the Jewish law. Okay. So all the food laws, the kosher laws, marriage laws, you commit yourself to following the law of Moses. And if you're a man and you're uncircumcised, which means you have you never had the foreskin of your penis cut off, it's just au natural as you were born, then you have to go through the ceremony of a moel, incising and cutting off the foreskin of your penis. You have to be circumcised. If you haven't been, if you're a male, if you're a woman, no, but if you're a man, yes. And then you are considered a full Jew. And your children, if you're a woman who converts, your children will be considered Jews. Not if you're a man. Remember, go back to number 1, born of a Jewish mother. So those are the 2 conditions. And I mentioned Israeli law. That is how they will judge you in Israeli law. If you want to emigrate to Israel, you're like, hey, I want to go back to the homeland. I want to go live in Israel, because I'm a Jew. And you present yourself and your application. You say, and they'll say, well, was your mother Jewish? Well, no, she was Irish, but my dad's Jewish. Sorry. Application rejected. You are not a Jew. Let us know when you've converted. So is this, hold on, what do I have? Oh yeah, no, I know why I have that. Now I'll move on because I need to make up some time. Sorry about that. I have a little video here. Well, it's a little video of a mikveh ceremony. This woman, she's not mikveh. If ethnically she looks Asian to me. She could be Filipino or I don't know. I don't know her background, but she looks Asian to me, of Asian heritage. She's there converting with her daughter. Okay. In the mikveh, here's the pool of water. Whoops. Let me go back here. And let me show her doing it. You are supposed to do it in the nude. She doesn't show this woman who's doing it, does not show her plunging into the water when she was totally naked. Okay, after her mikvah, which has to be done nude, she put on this bathing suit, and now she's doing the mikvah for her daughter. So her daughter's converting to Judaism. So yeah, we will watch a little bit of this. Let's take a look.
Notice there are 7 steps at every mikvah. Yeah. No, you wouldn't if you haven't been to.
I just noticed how once I get in your house, I am.
Good. So, right, so when you do, okay, Rabbi, I will be in charge. When you do, what you're going to do is sort of blow in her.
She likes swimming.
Okay.
The baby's having a good time. Baby is being baby.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nishani b'mitzvot al Mitzivanu al Tuvila.
Amen.
Another one.
Good.
Oh, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Good. 1, 2, 3.
You should have the
Okay, so what do I want to say here? Now, some of you in the class might be looking at this and be like, well, wait a second, dunking someone in water to become a Jew? That sounds familiar, right? Right? Yeah, Christianity. Well, Christianity comes out of Judaism. Jesus of Nazareth was a Jew, so he didn't reinvent the wheel. Okay, so you're right to see that connection. All right. So yeah, it's a baptism, a tevilah, as they call it in Hebrew, a baptism, a conversion. So 3 times she dunks the child down into the water, first blowing in her daughter's face. If I had to extrapolate, I think that's probably breathing the Spirit of God, just like in the book of Genesis, when God creates human beings out of the dirt, he breathes, he blows life into the dirt, and it becomes a living creature, Adam, the first man. So I think there's that symbolism going on there. It's like you're breathing spiritual life into the person who's being baptized, or who's being dunked in the mikvah for conversion. So this is her little girl, and she went through it before her little girl. And as I said, Christians do this. And I guess I'll mention a little bit more about that. I'll come back to it when I get to Christianity. But for example, in Christianity, notice that the priest pours water or dunks the person into the water 3 times in the name of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Each time, a person is baptized, the priest says, I baptize you in the name of the Father, dunk, and of the Son, dunk, and of the Holy Spirit, dunk. All right. Also, so 3 times. So there's a lot of the symbolism was incorporated into the Christian religion as well. The symbolism of what they're doing here. So religions don't reinvent the wheel necessarily. If it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It works. So you can see the similarity. All right. So now then they say prayers to God. They're blessing God for the commandments he has given to them in regards to tevilah or baptism, They're also blessing God with the Shema. We'll talk about the Shema in a later class, not this class. The statement of faith of Judaism, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. So that's a major statement of Jewish faith. So she's affirming that faith on behalf of her daughter. And then in other parts of the ceremony with this rabbi, she's saying other prayers. She's given her Jewish name. I think she took the name Ruth, okay, from a woman in the Bible. So you take a Jewish name. Okay, is there anything else? They sing songs. All right. So moving on. Hold on, the cat wants to come in. Come on. Come on. Yeah, just don't be bad. Because the cat wants to get into everything. She wants to know what I'm doing. Anyways, at the heart of Judaism are two beliefs. Two things you need to know about Judaism. Number one, there is only one God who is the creator and ruler of the universe. Okay? So monotheism. That's kind of like the special sauce of Judaism. That's what differentiated Judaism from all, and does still differentiate Judaism from all the other major religions. I should say, well, because you have Christianity and Islam. But, you know, in the history of the planet, before you had Christianity or Islam, Judaism was the only specifically, clearly monotheistic religion on the planet. There is only one God. Monos means alone, solitary, okay? Soul. Theos, we know, means God. So there is one God only, okay? And it's the first human religion to clearly come to this belief and to proclaim its absoluteness. Now, there, as we'll see as we go on, there will be development in this belief. I mean, it doesn't just happen within Judaism. You know, it kind of starts out with the belief that there is one God only that we worship, that we Jews worship, all right, which is not the same thing as monotheism, okay, because there can be other gods you could worship. But once it reaches the point where the Jews are saying there is no other God, there's only one God, that's monotheism proper. That's a unique part of Judaism, the Jewish religion. The other part that is linked to this is that this one God has chosen, elected, elego means to choose in Latin. This one God has chosen specifically the Jews to be his special people. What does this mean? That they have a relationship with this one God of the universe that no other group of people has. And this one God of the universe reveals himself to the Jews in a special way that he does not reveal himself to any other people on planet Earth. Okay? So you got to understand that. Monotheism and election. Those are, if you had to sum it up, you know, boil it down, those are the two big things. Now, before I move on, I do want to address this issue, okay? Within the community of Judaism, there are or have developed historically two main cultural kinds of Judaism. And this has to be kind of mentioned, all right? There are two cultural forms of Judaism. One cultural form developed primarily in Central and Eastern Europe. Hold on a second here. Let me go back to this. All right. Yeah, here we are. I want to get a map. There we are, maps. Uh-oh, I'm revealing where I live. Ooh, don't look. Actually, no, it's not revealing where I live. It's weird. Jefferson. Huh. Anyways, general region where I live in New Jersey. Okay, so we go over to the map here. Two cultural forms, okay? There's a cultural form that, as I said, Central and Eastern Europe, all right? Now, maybe if I, now, anyways, different way to show it, maybe. No, it doesn't matter. So Germany, Slavic countries like Poland, even as far over as Russia, okay, the Ukraine, all right. There's a cultural form that developed in that region which is called Ashkenazi, which actually is a Hebrew word that is used to designate Germany. So we have Ashkenazi Judaism. And I know some of you might look at it and be like, what? Uh-oh, Ashkenazi? Some of you might look at that and be like, well, wait a second, Dr. Dunn. That's really weird. Yeah, it is kind of weird that it's the name for Germany from Hebrew, Ashkenazi. I mean, the word doesn't mean Germany in Hebrew. I think it just means, what does it mean? Eastern, something like that. But anyways, I'd have to look it up to see what it literally means. But it's used as the name for Germany. Yeah, it has no connection to the Nazis, just so you know. That's just a total one of those weird coincidences that you can't make up. Okay, so we have Ashkenazi Jews, which is the cultural form of Judaism that developed in places like Germany and parts of Eastern Europe, as I showed you, like Poland, etc. Also, I should say France is included in Ashkenazi, even though France is not really Central Europe, but whatever. So France as well. So Germany, Eastern Europe, and then France is where Ashkenaziism developed. Okay. And most people who identify as Jews, the majority, around 10 million, come from this cultural group of Ashkenazi. And also most of the Jews in the United States are from this cultural form. I mean, what does it mean? Oh, it just means that, for example, Ashkenazi Jews speak Yiddish, which is a form of, it's Yiddish and Jews speak it, but it's actually medieval German. It's a form of medieval German written in Hebrew letters. That's what Yiddish is. So they have their own kind of Jewish language, Judeo-German, you might call it, called Yiddish. And they have their own kind of customs and stuff that come out of where they came. So the way they dress, like Hasidic Jews, a lot of the Hasidim, their groups come out of Eastern Europe, places like Lithuania, Poland, Russia. And so they still kind of dress like people dressed in Lithuania in the 1600s, long black coats and the hats they wear and stuff. So, that's it. Now, there's another form of cultural Judaism, which developed in what's called the Iberian Peninsula, which includes the countries of Spain and Portugal. Okay. Also includes the country of Andorra, but you can't see it. Anyways, but Spain, let's just go with it. Spain and Portugal, which in Hebrew was called Sepharad. So these are called Sephardi Jews. Sepharad. Hence they're called Sephardi Jews. And the name Sepharad, I guess I should put this on here so you can see it, is Germany. Usually it's the word for Germany, indicates Germany. And Sepharad indicates Iberia, okay, ancient Spain, ancient Portugal, that region of the world. Okay. But it also includes North African Jews and to some extent Middle Eastern Jews. Okay. Actually, I have to throw in that third view. But anyways, so mainly from Spain and Portugal. And again, just like, Jews, Ashkenazi Jews commonly speak Yiddish, which is a form of German, Jewish German. Sephardic Jews speak a form of Jewish Spanish called Ladino, interestingly enough. So Spain, Portugal, and then Northern Africa and parts of the Middle East. And the Sephardi Jews have their own cultural forms as well. So you have Ashkenazi synagogues in Israel, but you also have Sephardi synagogues. Then you have, where are we here? Then you have a third group. Didn't you say that was two, Dr. Dunn? Yes, but I just want to mention this one group. There's kind of a third group, but not really because it's so small. But Mizrahi Jews. How do I spell this? Mizrahi, yeah. Mizrahi Jews. Sometimes it's spelled with a C. It's Mizrahi, which the word means Eastern in Hebrew. Okay, so I was wrong about that for Ashkenazi. It means the East. So Jews from the East, meaning the land of Israel. Okay, so these, Jews who did not leave, I guess you could say, the motherland. That's the name for Jews that have always, Jewish families that have always been resident in the Middle East, in Israel or Lebanon or Jordan, in that region. The reason I don't put them as a group 3 is because, the Mizrahi Jews basically have mixed in so much with the Sephardi Jews, okay, that the Mizrahi kind of adopted many of the customs of the Sephardi Jews. So a lot of times the Mizrahi and the Sephardi are really indistinguishable. But, I think I've seen a picture of a Mizrahi synagogue. So, there might be some difference that I'm not aware of since I'm not Jewish, although I do worship a Jew. So yeah, that's you could call this a third group. Okay, but the two main groups, cultural groups, are Ashkenazi and Sepharad. And this will explain for some of you why, if you look at Jewish literature or stuff written about Judaism on the internet and stuff, they'll use the same words and spell them very differently and pronounce them very differently. Okay, and that comes from their background, whether it was an Ashkenazi background or a Sephardic background. All right, let's move on. Okay. I think for the history portion of this, I'm going, like I did with Hinduism, I'm just going to focus on the essential things related to the religion. I'm not going to worry about other stuff. But so just to let you know, so I'll cut stuff out. I might not talk about everything. But I do need to talk about the patriarchs. Okay? This is important. Ancient Israel. Okay? So Israel, the Jewish history, as far as we can ascertain it, started about 4,000 years ago, around the 1900s BC. All right. And a lot of our information about ancient Jewish history still to this day comes from the sacred writings of the Jews called the Bible. They don't call it the Bible, but a lot of people do. So I'll call it the Bible. Okay. They call it something else. But okay, so we have biblical historiography, the writing of history. That's all that word means. And there are, there is historical information throughout the Jewish scriptures. However, they have to be read cautiously because it's a sacred text for the Jews. The purpose of the authors was not history, properly speaking. It was religious. So yeah, when you read the Bible, if you try to read the Bible for history, you have to be cautious about it. All right. You want to compare it with archaeology, which is, Middle Eastern archaeology, other texts from surrounding cultures and stuff like that. They might give you I would say they probably would give you a more reliable idea of what biblical times were like. All right, just so you know. So the origins of the religion or of the people, really, it's the origins of a people, okay, which becomes the religion, all right, but a people. And the origins are set here in the Middle East, or we could call it the Near East, all right, Mesopotamia and Egypt especially, these two regions of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Mesopotamia between these two great rivers of the Tigris River and the Euphrates. So Mesopotamia means. Meso means middle in Greek, and potamos means a river. So in between the rivers, okay? So you have these two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and great civilizations started there, because you have water. You had water. So, a lot of this land around the two rivers is desert wilderness. So not very livable, but you have these two great rivers and it's very fertile. Okay. Can do a lot of farming and stuff. And then we have the great civilization of Egypt. You'll probably know about the whatchamacallit, the pyramids and stuff, like the pharaohs. Have you ever seen, like, Indiana Jones and Search for the Lost Ark and whatever, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, so the pharaohs and Egypt and the pyramids. Okay. So that's where our story begins with Judaism, and it begins with a man this man Abraham, also called Abram. Okay. He's also referred to as Abram. I wish I could, let me do this. There we go. But really, they're just two forms of the same name. All right. There's not really, it's not a big difference. Okay. There's no big thing going on here that he's called Abram, but then he changes to Abraham. All right. Really, they're two forms of the same name. Abraham, Abram, Abiram is another form of the same name. Okay. And they all are the same, just different forms. All right. And this man, Abram or Abraham, I'll use both, is apparently, at least according to the Bible, living in the southern part of Mesopotamia in a city called Ur, which you can see here. And yes, Ur did exist. It's been dug up, so we know it was there. He was living in this city of Ur, okay, in Mesopotamia. And so the Bible, the Bible opens up with the stories of these patriarchs. Okay, patriarch is a male head of a family. Pater in Latin means father. Okay, and arch comes from arche in Greek, which means a lot of things: foundation, principle, rule. Okay. So anyways, but the male head of a family is a patriarch. Okay. And Abraham is the first patriarch. Judaism is really a group of families. That's what Jews are. There's no one Jew, I guess you could say. All right. There are multiple groups that go back to these three men that are on the PowerPoint: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, but I'm talking about Abraham. So it's really a family history. We start out in the Bible with oral traditions, stories that people told about these father figures, these patriarchs, who were seen as the ultimate origin of the Jews and of Judaism. Okay, so if you're interested in that, you go to the book of Genesis in the Bible, the first book of the Jewish scriptures. All right. And so we have this man, Abraham, who is living in the city of Ur, okay, in southern Mesopotamia, which would be the modern country of Iraq today. Remember, we invaded Iraq a long time ago, like 20 years ago. That didn't go so well for us, but whatever. At least Iraq is a free country today, more or less. But yeah, in southern country of Iraq is where this is now. All right. So the whatchamacallit? Do I talk about that? Yeah. So it really starts out with the story of the ancestors in the book of Genesis and where the Jews came from. All right. So so if you read the book of Genesis, maybe you've heard of Noah and his ark, this man Noah. All right. And in Genesis chapter 10, it gives a list of Noah's sons, the children that Noah had. Okay. And one of the sons of Noah is named Shem. He has three sons: Japheth. What's the other one? Japheth, Ham. That's right. Ham and Shem. This guy Shem. All right. And it's from Shem that this guy Abraham will ultimately derive. All right. Shem, who comes from Noah, one of the sons of Noah. Hence, that will explain for some of you, or maybe many of you, why Jews are also called Semites. That's where it comes from. Hold on a second. I got to move some things around here. Move this out of the way. Okay. Hence, Semites or anti-Semitism comes from Shem, who's the ancient ancestor of the Jews through Abraham. Shem himself has children, has his own children, and some of those, one of those children has another child. Yes, that's right. No, he's a great grandfather, Shem is. So that would be another child and then another child, I think. Yeah. Shem's father and his grandfather and his great grandfather. Yeah, that's right. So Shem has a child, and that child has a child, and that child has a child. I hope I'm getting this right. But anyways, his name is Eber. Eber. All right. Who was another direct descendant of this man, Abraham. And so sometimes the Jews, the children of Abraham, are called after Eber, or Hebrews. Hebrews. All right. Whoops. Nice. So I can get that right. That comes from Eber, who is the great grandfather of Abraham, all right, or great. And then finally, we arrive at this man Terah, who gives birth to Abraham, our buddy Abraham that we were talking about. But I just wanted to go over this because you might sometimes wonder, well, Jew, Semite, Hebrew, you hear all these different names applied to this group. Where's this coming from? It's all relating to, ancestors. Semite refers to Shem, who's the old ancestor from Noah. Hebrew refers to Eber. Okay. And now where do we get, how do we get to Jew? Okay. How do we get to Jew or Israelite? Well, we got to start going through Abraham, this man, go back to this man, Abraham. Because Abraham has a son, Isaac, and his son Isaac has a son, Jacob. And it's this guy, Jacob, who is also called Israel. Apparently, God changes his name to Israel, Yisrael. So it's this guy, Jacob, Israel, that the Jews get named after. They're not the sons and the daughters, not of Abraham, but of Israel. They're Israelites. And Israel is not the name of a country or a nation. It's the name of this man, Jacob. Okay? Eventually, and maybe I'll get to that. Yeah, I guess I do get to that later. Hold on a second. Let me look at my... Yeah. So we get to Israelites. So this man, what happens? According to the story, this man, Abraham, and his wife are living in Ur, and God reveals himself. Okay? God reveals himself to this man, Abram. Or for some reason, Abram feels compelled by his God that he may have already been worshiping to travel, to actually get up and leave Ur and travel up the river, travel north. You don't want to go west because this is all desert, not very hospitable. So you would if you were going to travel over to the west somewhere, you would travel up, follow the river up, and then go down. And that's exactly what Abram and his wife Sarai do. His wife Sarai, she's important as well. Also known as Sarah, again, the same name, just a different spelling. And so they travel up, and then they travel down to this region of Canaan. This region of Canaan, which is the ancient name for Israel. Okay? According to the story of the Bible, this is all the action of God. God tells Abram to take his wife and to travel to the land of Canaan, which God promises he will give to Abram and to his future family. Okay? So there's a promise there of a family. Notice maybe you've noticed I said Abram and Sarah. I haven't mentioned any children yet. All right, because they didn't have any. It was just them. But God is promising, like, to your children, I will give you this land of Canaan. Okay, which is kind of a ridiculous thing to say, because first of all, according to the story, both Abram and Sarai are old. Sarai is definitely past the age for procreation. All right. They're both, each of them is very old. All right. Also, God's going to give them the land of Canaan, but Abram and Sarai, they're foreigners. They have no right to possess the land of Canaan. So how are they going to possess it as foreigners? And God says, I'm going to make your family into a great nation. A great nation. Which, as I already said, they don't have any children at all. They haven't had, they don't even have one child. Okay, so how's that going to happen? All right. But just go with it. Just go with the story. According to the story, eventually Abram and Sarai do actually have a child, whom I mentioned, this man named Isaac. But I put him here in smaller type and in brackets because he's really not that important to the story. He's really just a bridge character to get to this guy, Jacob Israel, who's the more important figure in the story of the Jews, even more important than Abraham, really. Because, as I said, the Jews are not called the sons and daughters of Abraham. They're called the sons and daughters of Israel. Okay? Jacob, who is Israel. So Isaac has children through this man, through his wives, and one of them is named Jacob. Okay? And Jacob, through his wives, has 12 sons, more or less. Okay. Different. If you read the Bible, there are different lists of the names of his sons, and sometimes it's around 11, sometimes it could be 14, but just go with it. Traditionally, Jacob had 12 sons, and it's from these 12 sons that and the children that the 12 sons have, that you now have the 12 tribes or family groups of Israel. Remember, Israel is a name. It's not a country. It's the name of the man. The 12 family groups of Jacob, of Jacob's sons. There's 12 sons. Let me see if I put that on the PowerPoint. Maybe I didn't. Anyways, I thought I had I do have a genealogy of the sons of Israel, but I didn't put it on the PowerPoint. Maybe I should have. But anyways, so their tribe, the 12, how do we get to the 12 tribes of Israel or the Israelites? Well, we get it through Jacob Israel. A tribe is a social group that has distinct and unified characteristics. What's their distinct characteristic? Well, of each tribe is who their father is. So you have one of the sons is named Gad. So you have the tribe of Gad, Gad and all of his children, You have Reuben. So that's the tribe of Reuben and all of his children. You have the tribe of Levi, the priests. So, Levi and all of his descendants and stuff like that. Okay, so you see, so Israel is not a unified nation of people. It's a group of clans and tribes that all derive ultimately from this man, Jacob/Israel. Hence, we get to Israelites, the sons and daughters of Israel. Right? See here in Latin, tribus, a tribe, a division of a group of people. That's all it means, a tribus, to dividing up a group of people. All right. So this is where we get to Israelite from Jacob Israel. Yes. Israel, and hence we have Israelite. One of Jacob's sons, from which one of the tribes of Israel comes, one of his sons is named Yehuda or Judah. Judah. Okay? And it's from Yehuda, his son Judah, that we get and arrive finally at Jew. Yeah, I should put that in all caps. Jew. All right? That's where we get the word Jew from. And in Hebrew, that is the word for Jew. The sons, the children of Judah, of the son Judah. Because according to the story, if you read further in the Bible, only the tribe of Yehuda, of Judah, apparently has survived, has clearly survived. Okay? All the other tribes of Israel we don't know where they are. We don't know where they've gone. Okay, they've been dispersed for various reasons, usually mainly because of war. Okay, but so the surviving tribe seems to be of Yehuda or Judah, and hence that comes to be the word for Israelites who are Hebrews, who are Semites, Jews. Okay, that's where we get Jew. From these tribes. Okay, so it starts out as a family group and the only God that they worship. All right, that's what we've got. So again, monotheism, it's the only God they worship, that they recognize, and election. This God chooses them, chooses their great grandpappy Abram, and tells him, okay, take your wife and go to this faraway land that I'm going to give to you. All right. And you will only worship me as your God, and I will make you a great group of people. I've chosen you to be a great group of people on the earth. All right. Now, eventually in the story, the second book after Genesis. So basically what I've told you is all in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. But right after the book of Genesis comes this book called Exodus. Okay. Which also you need to understand the Exodus in order to understand Jewish identity. Okay. Because the Exodus affects everything. It's how the Jews view themselves. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Eventually, somehow, don't know how, all right, the descendants of this man Abraham, some of them, according to the story, moved down here to Egypt to live. Okay. And they lived there for several centuries. According to the traditional number is, around 400 years. The Jews, or the descendants of Abraham, are living as strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay. Away from what was supposed to be their homeland. All right. So there's apparently a migration. Okay. And the point of the book of Exodus, the Exodus, you can see it in the word Exodus in Greek means a way out. Exodos in Greek, a way out. Ex means out of in Greek. Out of, and a hodos is a way, a path, you could say as well. So our word exit, if you called it the exit, it's the same thing. Okay, a going out. So the going out, which is the term used for this event of liberation, of freedom of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. Okay, during their time in Egypt, they had been made slaves of the Egyptians, and God comes to save them and free them and bring them back, lead them out back to the land that he wanted them to be in. God didn't tell Abram to go to Egypt. He told him to go to Canaan. So he's going to bring them back to Canaan. Okay. The Exodus, the migration, this is the migration of the Israelites from Egypt to Canaan, which is modern day Israel. Okay. So that's the story told in the Exodus, how God intervenes through this man, Moses, to bring the the sons and daughters of Israel back to the land which he promised them. And at this point, I think I'll stop. Let me just make a note here for myself because, yeah, this is as far as I think I'll go for now because we've reached our time. My alarm went off. And I don't want to get into the Exodus. There's more I can say about the Exodus, okay? But I'll come back to it next week on Tuesday. So God bless you all and have a good day. Thank you for spending time with me. If you've been watching the live stream, if you're watching it later, well, then God bless you wherever you are and whatever time of day it is. Let me stop sharing my screen with you. There we go. You can see me. So yeah, I will see you on Tuesday. God bless you all.